Posting on True Social, people live in homes, not corporations, and he's pushing Congress to act. It's a move intended to reinvigorate the American dream.
We want to preserve the wealth that a lot of people have accrued in their homes while also making it possible for young people to afford their first home, make it affordable for young families to raise young families. I think if you really give people a sense of ownership in this country, a sense that they can build something, build a nest egg, build a family, that is the trick to reinvigorating the American dream.
So is banning large housing investors a path to the American dream, or a government intrusion full of unintended consequences? Jillian, what do you say? Can I come to you first on this? What's your reaction?
Awesome.
Okay.
I remember this in 2020 specifically. And I sold my house in 2021, and one of these investment firms wanted to actually buy the house so they could rent it out. And I have much younger siblings who've struggled with this. And I was seeing young people swarming the internet, complaining about the fact that companies like Zillow were buying up all these houses to rent them out and make the younger generation forever tenants. I think this is awesome.
Okay.
I can't understand it from your perspective, but from a layman's terms, I love it's great, and I've heard it's a huge problem.
I feel a little debate brewing.
Oh, really? Okay, teach me.
So let's see. Jackie, I'll come to you next. What do you think about it?
So I understand the president has a problem with housing right now. Rates are high. Prices have just gone up since the time that you're talking about. Really, they were on the rise into COVID. And then with low rates, the prices just really kind of got out of control. And so something has to happen to balance the housing market. We understand that. But I'm just not sure that I love what he's doing here, because I really am a free markets person. And I think that, you know, going and saying that one entity, investors or private equity, can't buy these homes and rent them out. I mean, where's his authority to do that? I think he's going to be questioned and potentially need congressional approval to be able to do this.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, just to give you some insight why I'm really qualified to speak on this, I spent probably the last 4 or 5, longer than that, probably 6 years dealing with institutional investors. When I say institutional investors, I'm talking about people that decided to get together in a corporation. They're backed typically by Wall Street money, and they buy. Sometimes it's not Wall Street money. Sometimes it's just people who pull their money together and they want to buy portfolios. So what they do is they go through different parts of the country. They locate certain market areas and they buy it. So I'm in Atlanta. They buy in that market area. So I'm in Atlanta. Atlanta's market, and people think it's crazy what I'm saying, but I think it's closer to about 15 to 20% of Atlanta's market is actually institutional investment dollars. So to give you an idea, if you're out looking for a house to rent and you want to rent a house, if you line them all next to each other, probably 6 out of every 10 would actually be some type of institution that owns it, some type of corporation that owns it. And you'll find that that corporation owns can own a couple hundred homes, but they have a staff, and the staff, their responsibility is finding tenants and doing tenant placement. But they've been running this play going back to 2007, 2008. The reason why the market actually made it out of the recession that it was in when the market crashed, if you remember when the real estate market crashed and people were losing their homes and people were buying homes stupid cheap from a foreclosure. When that market crashed, a lot of the buyers came from institutional dollars. Those institutional dollars allowed the market actually to stabilize. So if the institutional buyers wasn't there to buy the house, then I'm sorry, if the primary buyer wasn't there to buy it to live in, then the institutional buyer will come in. And don't get this confused with people who buy real estate to add to their real estate portfolio. Those people are typically under 20 homes, under 50 homes. They're typically around 20 to 25 homes. That's the private mom and pop institutional investor. My private mom and pop corporate investor. That means you got an LLC and you started it with your buddy or you, and you guys may have a little bit of money. You may have a line of credit from a bank, and you're just looking for property with a certain cap rate. And we could talk about that in another day, cap rates. But they have what's called a buy box. And in that buy box, they search for properties that fit into that box. So it may be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It may be a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. I've seen them only do 4-sided brick. I've seen them they want to buy property, but it has to have a driveway and it has to have a garage. These are buy boxes that institutional investors go by. So when they find a property in a certain market, they put it against that buy box that determines if they buy it or not. So guess what? If that buy box is pretty large, they can end up buying a bunch of homes. So I've seen investors that buy, institutional investors with asset management companies, purchasing anywhere between anywhere between 15, 20, 10 homes that month, 5 homes that month. Every month they're buying more because they have the dollars. So what they're looking for is the cash flow. These guys help the market come back, okay? I don't know if Trump will actually be able to eliminate institutional buyers all from the market. That sounds more like a socialist thing, like a liberal thing to do. But I do agree there needs to be some type of restriction. Just like I'm a believer that foreign nationals, from other countries don't deserve the right to buy and own property in the U.S., okay, because they're not U.S. citizens. Same thing, I believe, when it comes to real estate. There has to be some cap that keeps big money or institutional buyers from coming in and just wreaking havoc in a subdivision. Because they can go buy a whole subdivision, turn around and rent it. The mom, the buyer, the husband and wife couple, the new graduate coming out of college, they want to buy a place, they landed a great job. It's fewer and fewer of those available because institutional buyers are able to get in and buy.
Which I don't think that he will get. I agree that it will create a situation that will allow more individuals to get into the housing market, which is what we want because it's been part of the American dream. I'm not taking a position on whether I think it's kind of right or wrong. I'm just looking at what he's trying to do. And I'm stepping back and thinking that there are reasons that private equity is flocking to the housing market because I have a good friend in private equity, runs a firm. Traditionally, what they would do is take basically troubled businesses and either try to turn them around or break them up, sell off the parts. That's one aspect. Private equity has really branched out and fanned out into so many different things now, including the housing market. But I'm thinking about smart people sitting back saying, how do you make a good investment given the lay of the land and the way things are today? And so housing seemed like it was a good option, which is what attracted all that capital there.
Well, it wasn't just a good option. You had a lot of houses that were sitting there and fewer buyers than ever before. So our recession wouldn't have ended. I truly believe it wouldn't have ended as fast as it did. And some people say it wasn't fast. I mean, you had a couple years, right? But no, that thing could have actually went on for decades. Okay, because when that market is down and housing is so down, it affects everything. So I wouldn't penalize institutional buyers because I've worked with them and I know they're trying to build a portfolio. But I know that there has to be a certain cap in that market area, meaning I would think that they would have it where you can only do 15% in a specific market, or you can only hold 10% of your portfolio in a specific market, or you can only hold 1% of that particular market or less than 1%. However it is, probably put a dollar amount or probably put a single family housing amount on that particular market. However they choose to do it, don't penalize. I'm not for penalizing institutional buyers, but I am for limiting their access to the buyers, to the properties in the market. Now, don't get this confused with the mom and pop, because mom and pops are the ones that do the fixer-uppers. They fix it up. It may be a husband and wife couple. It just may be a husband. It may just be a woman. Who knows? It typically is one person or two people with limited amount of cash, and their goal is to fix and then to flip the property for capital. Very dangerous thing. I've done it, lost money, won money doing it. So be careful when you do that. It sounds glorious until you find out that it's not working. Like people don't pay their bill, all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. So you've got that, and then you've got the mom and pop who may locate one or two properties. Like I know one guy, he's probably got about 12 properties in his portfolio right now. He buys one piece of property each year because he works in corporate America, has a great corporate job, but he invests in one property each year. So he's got about 12. He's been doing that for the last 12 years. His father told him how to do that. When we spoke about it and he started going through it, I said, it's a basic strategy. It's not complicated. These are the people that you would deal with when you have to pay your rent. I mean, you want to deal with someone you can touch, you can feel. I've been in that place before where I rented a place where most the owners lived in France, and they owned about, I think probably about 800 houses in Georgia. 800. That's a lot of houses in Georgia, and that was only one part of their portfolio. So, and it became very, very hard, man, to turn around and get things fixed. I mean, you would call them, they would send probably the most average person out. That person, like, I can't get it fixed. I got to come back tomorrow. I don't have a part. And one day, what takes one day ends up becoming 3, 4, 5 days. As a renter, I did that before as a renter. I don't rent anymore, but I understand that sometimes even with corporate investors, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a better product. Okay. But that's what happens.
I just worry with the president taking stakes, government stakes in companies like Intel, and doing certain things. I think his intention is good, but I don't, even though I like him,
that unintended
think he should overstep.
Issue. Okay, so I do think it's true that he wants this to be congressionally approved. That's the route he wants to go on this. Dagan, I'm going to come to you. I just throw a couple of stats out, and I see differing figures, but they're all around this ballpark. Large institutional investors, like the kind being targeted here, own about 2% of single-family rentals, about 1%, slightly less, of single-family homes. So they loom.
Those numbers are not right. I mean, I guess if he's looking at it nationally, probably. Who knows? But I think you got to also focus in what market, because they don't own 2% in California. Like institutional investors won't buy in California because the rate between the taxes, insurance issues, and rent caps, it's insane. It's insane. So I think that number is kind of off when he's saying it, but it depends on if it's where they're kind of gauging it at, you know?
Large in our imagination. We could debate the numbers, but numerically, I don't think they're as big as we think they are. But maybe you've got different data.
They are huge. The numbers are huge. Think of it, even if I said 15 to 20% of the inventory in Atlanta, 15 to 20% of the houses that can hit the market at any given time, whether on market or off market, because a lot of them do shopping off market. So let's take an example, Open Door, right? OfferPad or Open Door. Open Door, just like Zillow try to imitate and do, Open Door probably leads the way in buying houses as is and giving you a cash offer. Okay. Are they suffering? Yeah, they're suffering. That business model on a corporate side is causing them to suffer. Open Door makes it now when they buy that house, they can turn around and liquidate that property on the back end to one of these institutional investors. So they're getting it from you and you're getting the money that you need. But on the back end, that property is not going to stay with Open Door because Open Door, they're not landlords. They're almost like the mid guy. They hold the property. It's like a holding company. They just hold the property, do some real cheap booty renovations, bad renovations, and they put it back out on the market for you to buy. Or if they decide, hey, we can't renovate this, this is not going to give us the return we need, then they'll turn around and sell it to one of their institutional investors on the back end. Okay. And sometimes it never even makes it to the market for them. Sometimes it'll sit on the market for a period of time and then it'll go to an institutional investor if a buyer doesn't buy it.
You can take it away.
The large institutional investors like Cerberus, Blackstone owns a couple of, they bought Home Partners in 2021, a $6 billion deal. Tricon Residential, that was another 38,000 U.S. rental homes. It's worth noting that Steve Schwarzman, Blackstone's chief executive, is a great benefactor politically to President Trump's political operation for many years. So 2% of the nation's single-family rental housing stock are these big institutional investors. 30% of single-family home purchases beginning of last year were investors. But it's the small.
And that needed to happen. When you don't have enough buyers that qualify to buy homes, or you don't have enough buyers that can afford to buy homes, we're talking about an affordability issue. If that property stays on the market for an extended period of time, it's just going to drop in price. It may get sold, it may not get sold. These institutional buyers have made it quite easy for homeowners to actually sell their property without having to go and list it on the market. So they have great benefits. It's very strong benefits with institutional buyers, investors. And one thing I'm going to throw in here too, if you are trying to invest in real estate, and let's say you just aren't in the position to go out and buy a single family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever the case may be, some of these portfolios are in REITs. REITs are real estate investment trust. Real estate trust, they're a company, the best way to describe it is a company that has a certain buying portfolio and it's public. So you can earn, which I do, or my dividends for REITs that I enjoy buying into, dividends on that on a monthly basis. So it's almost like earning income and owning a property. Of course, the more stocks you own, the more shares you own in that company, the more you get paid, of course, each month. But depending on how many shares you own, don't go buy $40 worth of share and think you're going to retire off of it. They're a pretty steady, consistent asset. They don't really run up so far or run down or anything. They pretty much stay consistent. And that's why it's great to park your money for cash flow in there. But if he does that, I'm of the mind that I may exit out some of the REITs that I'm in, because if this does go into place, it's going to affect them in some way. You know, either they're going to have to liquidate their portfolio, or is going to cap how much they can actually get.
Investor that accounts for 90% of the market of investor owners. So when President Trump talks about this, how big is big? Is it just Blackstone's? Because are you going to crack down on people who have sopped up properties, say, across Florida or Arizona, who are renting them out as Airbnbs? Because quite frankly, those people are keeping properties off the market.
Nah, she's completely off on that. Totally different between that. Ignore it.
That's a large part of the supply problem in the United States.
I think that's what we're supposed to do. And then I'll add to this, the American dream isn't owning a home. Please, I think the days of the American dream being owning a home, those days are done or past. I think the American dream, based off of my opinion, friends I've spoken to, entrepreneurs I've spoken to, is owning a cash flow business that cash flows even when the market is down and when it's up. It doesn't matter. It's still cash flowing. That's the new American dream. It's less about owning a home or a property. It's less about it.
But you talked about the authority. President Trump's stealing an idea from Elizabeth Warren. If that doesn't make you shake in your boots, I don't know what will. But President Trump has shown that he gets to meddle in your business and will happily do so. That is established. Intel, taking some of the revenue from chip sales of NVIDIA and AMD to China. But that's called one ginormous bully pulpit. And he may have no way of actually banning the purchase of single-family homes by these investors, but he doesn't need to actually ban it. He doesn't need to screw Blackstone, as an example, on home buying. Blackstone knows that President Trump and his ilk can screw them in other ways on regulations or the power of the federal purse. So you can throw your weight around in a major way, and whatever the benefit is derived by these big firms from buying single-family homes, they're just going to stop doing it to prevent him from getting big, mad, bigly ugly at them in other ways. So it's the power of the bully pulpit. I don't like it, but that's what's going on. And I would argue they're probably not out there even sopping up these properties at this point.
See, first of all, I'm going to buy some of that Fannie Mae stock. But I think she's missing a point because this approach came up with Kamala. She was campaigning off of it. She said, "Hey, we're going to kick out investors, corporate investors, out of owning property." There's really no way you can actually do it. I mean, yeah, if I look at Dodd-Frank, which was an issue which affected, in our space, we call that owner financing and financing deals and some of the things that you could not do at closing. Like it used to, if you ever heard of someone said, "Hey, I got $10,000 back at closing," and they don't do that anymore, that's Dodd-Frank's. They put that into place where you can't collect money at closing any longer or get money back if you're buying a piece of property. So things and rules like that restricted how you can actually move. But that was based on the federal lending side. But if we look at it now, which is better, REITs or fractional share ownership when it comes to new low entry level real estate concepts? I think Daryl Turner, thanks for chiming. Thanks for the comment too. I appreciate it. I think it depends on where you're at. Okay. The thing with fractional share ownership, it's very similar to REITs. You don't really own it. You own the company that owns it with REITs. If you have a fractional share model, and tell me if I'm wrong, from what I know about this fractional share model, you own that particular property spread between multiple individuals. Now, to me, when I own property spread between multiple individuals, not housed in an LLC, then you're now left to what these individuals do that affect your ownership in that your ownership shares in that property. So you got to keep in mind, if you have an LLC set up, and this is not legal advice, I'm not trying to give you legal advice with this, okay? This is for entertainment purposes only. My experience on it, when you have this fractional model set up and you're sharing that ownership with other individuals and it's under an LLC, you're now liable for things that they have. Okay, you're liable for things that may take place with them. It's almost like a partnership, and I don't like that. I've been burnt with partnerships. I'm of the belief, if you can do it yourself. Okay, do it yourself. Me and my wife, we bought our first Airbnb property by ourselves. We didn't do it with a bunch of people. We didn't do it with one of these models that were out. Now, what I like about REITs, you don't have to manage nothing. You don't have to manage it. You're not dealing with profit loss statements. You're not dealing with collecting rent. You're not dealing with a property management company that's not getting rent. Then they got to put the people out. The REIT handles all of that. Okay. New low entry level real estate concepts. I'm going to tell you about this. I'm a fan of creative real estate and I love creative real estate. But there are times for creative real estate. And if you're trying to build a portfolio long term, I would say control the asset in that creative real estate deal. Don't give it to somebody else to control. Don't partner with other people to control. Try to control that asset 100%. Because in a creative situation, and that is a creative type of situation, you're left now to, depending on how you get into it, the knowledge of other people to navigate those challenges. So if those people haven't done any type of fractional share ownership before, if it's a company that's set up that does fractional share ownership, I want to know how fast I can get in, how fast I can get out. See, with REITs, I can go online right now, go to my Fidelity account, and I can sell all my holdings in that particular company. I can have that done in a matter of hours in a matter of minutes and exit out. Real estate, you can't do that. That's the biggest thing with real estate. You can't exit out as fast as you get in. And you think, okay, 30 days to get into an asset that pays you 1% of what it's worth monthly. That's great. 30 days to get into it. But to get out of it is really just going to depend on the season, man. If you try to exit out of some of these share positions and it requires them to sell the asset or you got to sell the house, you're stuck. I mean, you're stuck. It may be a down market, so many different reasons, you know?
point, you ought to worry about them dumping them on the market and driving home prices down.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Taylor, let me get sentimental for a second.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I'm going to
Let's
get
do
not
it.
economic. I'm going to get sentimental. All right. I think there's non-economic value
Bingo.
in owners occupying homes, family formation, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you probably don't like this idea either, is my guess. Are there other good things that could be done to encourage that wouldn't be so market distorting or invade private property? Like, I don't know, maybe could you get a bigger homesteading tax break at the federal level or something that would advantage living in the home that you own? I throw that out.
Yeah, and I don't think they incentivize it enough for private owners to actually own the property. The incentives are corporate owning the property, the tax write-offs that you get under that LLC when you own it. It's not, to me, it's not large enough when you buy a property. That I know that's the reason why Robert Kiyosaki had that issue when he said your house is not an asset. And a lot of people got upset. And I do agree with him because, I've had property that pays me each month, but I tend to pay my house note each month. So I have to pay my bill each month. And the value is really in having all my children, my wife, under one roof, the shared experiences of the backyard, shared experiences of Christmas, shared experiences of all those different things which money can't buy. Okay. So when I kind of look at what he's trying to do, I think it's a great thing because the reality of it is BlackRock, they're gonna own, if they keep buying at the way that they're buying right now, they can potentially own 50%, if not more, of the country's housing. It's not like they're capped in their financial situation. And there's so many untapped markets right now in real estate that people haven't even tapped into. Like, for example, I'm in Georgia. I was recently looking at the Augusta and Columbus market, South Georgia. I never looked at it before and just realized, man, it's a very linear market. You're not talking about highfalutin places like Buckhead where you're dealing with high prices. Everything's pretty much 200, 150,000, some cases 100,000, depending on where you go. And you're always going to have somebody to rent there. You're always going to have a blue collar renter who works either at the local factory or somewhere to rent there. That is what they're looking for. So that's what they know. That is the cash flow system. And I tell investors too, when I work with them, stick to that basic model, man. When you start doing all this other crazy stuff, which I've done so many different versions of it, you'll find out that you would have gone further, been a little bit more consistent with your cash flow, and had less issues if you just would have bought and held in a market where it slowly rises, but you're consistently getting your payment because everybody's got to make their payment each month. They work, so they don't mind making their monthly payment.
There to you, because the sentimental side of me wants maybe something here, maybe there's nothing there.
No, so Jillian, I agree with you from that sentimental point of view. I was talking yesterday about how my in-laws were in a neighborhood and a big corporation, a big institutional investor came up and they moved because they deteriorated the value of the neighborhood, the community, right? When you have a community of renters versus owners, we know that it changes what it looks like. As a homeowner and a renter myself, I know that when I'm a homeowner, I typically take care of the property a little bit more. When I'm renting, I don't care as much if I accidentally scrape the wall. I'm not there doing my whitewashing to really get that scrape off. And so when we think about a neighborhood and the non-economic incentives of owning a home, I like home ownership in a theory of teaching responsibility. So I understand that. Brian, to your point, yes, I don't think going after a big institutional buyer is the way to do it, though there are pockets of neighborhoods that I've seen that can be impacted by that. Bill Pulte, I think, said it best. Instead of drill, baby, drill, let's build, baby, build. Let's get all that blue tape out of the way. I know we're going to talk about the Palisades fire at the bottom of this segment, right? If you get all that big blue tape, and I'm calling it blue tape, not red tape.
I hear that.
I would understand why Pulte and Lanier would actually want that. because they own some of the largest land. I mean, they're one of the, not one of, I think next to the federal government, if you put these builders together, they own so much land right now. They bought it so cheap. They're sitting on this land, and as they're sitting on it, it's appreciating, okay? Because, of course, the value of housing, people wanting to get houses. So I can understand why they're saying that. I don't know if that's the best, you know.
Yes, clever.
Then let's build, let's incentivize. He also said, if let's say institutional investors are banned, which I don't think it would actually happen, does that take away portions of buyers? What does that do to demand? There's still going to be so much demand for housing that if you took that segment of buyers away, that wouldn't impact it. I think we've talked on this program about big supply side tax cuts. Let's talk about supply side on the housing side, right? So much I think you can do to incentivize builders to build. Let's talk about getting those starter homes back for, at those prices that Americans can afford when they're really just starting to form families. I think those are better incentives and things to do.
Really quick.
Rents and home prices have actually already softened in some of the Sun Belt cities that have seen the most construction.
Really.
Yeah, in Georgia, Atlanta, man, if you're in another state and you want to park your money in Atlanta, let me know. In Atlanta, you got to see, I've seen $10, $20, $30,000 reductions on properties that I'm like, dang, 30,000 reduction on it. But yeah, it is softening. I agree with it. It is softening, but I think they're not seeing it through the right lens, because while it's softening, you also have a lot of jobs that have people that have lost their jobs. So we've got a high influx of foreclosures right now that are pending, and it's constantly growing. They anticipate, even with all of the positive messages concerning 2026 with real estate, and I believe there's going to be some great opportunities out here, they still haven't put anything into place to stop the foreclosures that are pending and looming right now because of job loss, okay, or just sheer inflation. Every time you talk about real estate, you got to think about property taxes, because that is one of the biggest things that cause people to lose their homes when you have high appreciation markets. We saw it in Georgia. I believe we saw it outside of Georgia in certain places. The more outside of Atlanta, in certain places, east side of Atlanta, west side of Atlanta, when you get out into the suburbs, you'll see those beautiful homes that are 500, 600,000, and they're going up in prices. That's affecting the tax bill. And that is the biggest thing that's going to cause people to lose their homes. I'm telling you, that is the biggest thing. That tax bill based on appreciation is going to be the biggest thing. I'm hoping that as it softens, we may not see it in 2026, but we'll see it in 2027, an adjustment in property taxes.
Quickly, Jillian, I like what Taylor's saying in terms of get rid of the regulation, bring it down. But I know from where you live, and you've seen this, that moves at a glacial pace. And in politics, glacial pace isn't great when you're trying to compete for a midterm.
I can't speak to the legalities of everything you guys are talking about. I just know that the system in my business is rigged for big business, and it disenfranchises and disadvantages the little guy. And when we get to the Palisades, I'm going to have a lot to say about that one.
And real estate has historically been a mom and pop business. I mean, when you have the We Buy Houses, I got my rebuy houses because I buy them. We Buy Houses, ugly house buyers, those are just franchises of mom and pops. I felt like it was out of pocket for a lot of these big businesses to get in and start manipulating that format. They literally took the same thing and they started using it, giving lower quality, if any quality, to the people that were buying the houses from them. And it's not a good look, man. It's just not a good look. So